In this exercise, we want to know what worries you. We've identified 5 potentially distinct life domains that people are usually worried about. They are health, safety, social relations, achievement, and economics. For each life domain, we would like to know what worries you the most and what you would find fearful or bad if it actually did happen. First, settle into a comfortable sitting position. Gently close your eyes. Let's begin with the health domain. Think about one thing in the health domain that worries you the most. For example, you may be worried about getting cancer, about your own death, or that someday a family member will be gone. Focus on one thing in the health domain that worries you the most. If you cannot find anything in the health domain that worries you, think about one thing in the previous week that worries you. Now you should have one thing in the health domain that worries you. What about this thing would you find fearful or bad if it actually did happen? For privacy reasons, please do not speak your answer. Simply think about it in your head. Let's move on to the next domain, safety. Think about one thing in the safety domain that worries you. For example, you might be worried about being a victim of an assault, about someone close to you being injured in a car accident, about a rising national crime rate, or about a potential outbreak of a nuclear war. If you cannot find anything in the safety domain that worries you, think about one thing in the previous week that worries you. Now you should have one thing in your mind that is related to the safety domain. What about this thing would you find fearful or bad if it did actually happen? You do not have to speak about your answer, simply think about it. Let's move on to the next domain, social relations. Please concentrate on one thing in social relations that worries you. For example, you might be worried about not having any close friends, not being attractive, a relationship breakup, or just about being lonely. If you can't find anything in the social relations domain that worries you, think about one thing from the previous week that worries you. With one thing in the social relations domain that worries you, think about how you would feel if it did actually happen. Again, please do not verbalize your thoughts. Let's move on to the next domain, achievement. You might be worried about your own academic failure, or that things might not work out in your job. You might be worried about national academic achievement, or about humankind's misuse of scientific knowledge. Whatever is in your mind, focus on one thing in the achievement domain that worries you the most. If you cannot find anything in the achievement domain that worries you, think about anything in the previous week that worries you the most. Now, think about how you would feel if it did actually happen. Finally, we move on to the last domain, economics. You might be worried about getting into financial difficulty someday, or that your friends or family are in financial difficulty. Whatever is in your mind, focus on one thing in the economics domain that worries you the most. If you cannot find anything to worry about in this domain, simply think about one thing in the previous week that worries you the most. With one thing in the economics domain that worries you, think about how you would feel if it did actually happen. You may now gently open your eyes. Slowly, bring your awareness back to the present. Feel the various sensations in your body. This is the end of the exercise.